here from Video South.
Welcome. So 3 speakers have joined us.
All right, sir.
Rohilla and Professor Babu.
Yes.
You give me the green signal, we'll start, Professor Babu.
Yes, sir. Let Manu, how long will Manu Bhatnagar will take time?
Manu Bhatnagar, we are getting in touch with him. All for Manu Bhatnagar.
मेट्रो फ्लाईओवर जहाँ से एंट्री पर करोगे किधर से आ रहे हैं सर? अच्छा आगे आप फ्लाईओवर जहाँ उतरेगा ना आगे से यू टर्न लेगा आना मेट्रो स्टेशन के नीचे से हाँ जी ना जॉन के ऊपर जो फ्लाईओवर है वो ऊपर से यू टर्न लेके वापस आना देखिए डायरेक्टर साहब कहाँ रह गए
Manu Bhatnagar has joined.
Good morning, Manu Bhatnagar, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning, Manu Bhatnagar, sir. Good morning.
Morning to you.
Good morning. So still we have Dr. Ritesh and Neha Sinha to join.
Shall we start, sir?
Shall we? Okay, sir. So I, on behalf of the Wetland Authority of Delhi, welcome everyone. It's our privilege to host this webinar on the occasion of the World Wetlands Day on February 2. It's a very important day in a calendar, in the environmental calendar year, because this is a sole day which is acknowledged by the UN and all international agencies, which is dedicated towards conservation and management of wetlands. And we at Wetland Authority, we are so happy and we are so privileged to host a galaxy of expert speakers who will be deliberating on the future of conservation, especially the wetlands in Delhi. From the Wetland Authority, I would like to set the ball rolling by telling that we have listed around 1,033 wetlands in Delhi. And out of the 1,033 wetlands, we are able to prepare 278 action plans and around 110 brief documents as per the wetland rules. And we are in the process of getting those brief documents and action plans approved, and then we'll get down to restoration of the wetlands. So this is what our actions have been till now, and we have a plan in place, and with the help of all experts on wetlands in Delhi, we'll be able to ensure that the future of wetlands are in safe hands. Now, to start the proceedings, I would now request Professor C.R. Babu to speak on his topic, especially on restoration of wetlands, of which he has done wonderful work in Delhi. So, please.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Jaichandran. Respected Dr. Jaichandran, distinguished invitees and participants. Today we are having this webinar as a part of celebration of World Wetland Day by Wetland Authority of there's some noises coming up, sir. First, let me thank Dr. Jaichandran. Are you hearing me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm hearing you.
All right. First, let me thank Dr. Jaichandran for inviting me to participate in today's webinar. Although the focal theme of this year's World Wetland Day is wetlands and water, but lot of noise is coming.
I request Colin Easter 2 to please mute his mic. Colin Easter 2. There's one person who has kept his mic on and is disturbing the proceedings. Colin Easter 2. Can you please mute your mic?
बढ़िया सा मतलब फोटोग्राफ और वीडियोग्राफी बढ़िया से करता है इनके बच्चे की
Colin Easter 2.
और ये है ना उसमें प्रोग्राम में ऑनलाइन में डालना है ये
I'm talking.
When I'm talking. Colin Easter 2. Can you please mute your mic?
सर प्लीज म्यूट हिम एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन क्या है आगे से
उसका एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन को बताओ ना बंद करने से. Yeah, we are doing it. Thank you.
All right. Although the focal theme of this year's World Wetland Day is wetlands and water, but I have decided to speak on preservation of wetlands, 3 challenges. I just take about 10 minutes or so, and then I'll show you a couple of videos showing how we have restored the wetlands. Some noise is still coming, sir. If we want to...
I'm muting him, sir. I'm muting him.
Yes. If we want to translate the spirit of World Wetland Day celebration into action on the ground, we must fulfill 3 objectives. First objective is saving or protecting 0.05% of wetlands per year from dumping of solid waste and or discharging sewage or wastewater. The second objective is restoration of at least 0.05% degraded wetlands per year to functional natural states. And last objective is sustainable management of at least 0.05% of wetlands. These objectives should be implemented at each district level across the country. The implementation of each objective is a challenge. Coming to the first objective, action plan for the action plan for the implementation of the first objective involves formation. There are a lot of disturbance. Involves the formation of vigilance groups of volunteers who can educate the public not only on the what you call need for preservation of wetlands, but also serve as a watchdog for preventing the dumping of solid waste and discharging wastewater into the wetlands. The second objective is much more bigger challenge. Otherwise, Jaichandran, there is a lot of disturbance. The second
particular person calling you, sir, he doesn't have a mic.
The second objective is a challenge, is a bigger challenge, as most of the wetlands are dead. In fact, 87% of the world's wetlands were extinct. The water source or the catchments are lost or disrupted due to developmental, what we call, activities. The characteristic inlets and outlets also lost. Consequently, most of the wetlands are what we call silted and become terrestrial habitats. The question is how to restore these what you call dead or degraded wetlands. the restoration of what you call these dead wetlands involves action plan that includes restoration of catchments, revival of inlets and outlets, desiltation, development of embankments and vegetation, introduction of phyto and zooplankton, aquatic plants, fish and drinking water. Now, whether we have successfully restored any of the dead wetlands, I must tell you here that the Emeritus Park of Delhi Development Authority has successfully restored dead wetlands into a functional natural state. In fact, one wetland restored wetland stores 500 million gallons of flood water every year and recharge groundwater of the tune of 700 metric cube of water. And this water, in fact, sometimes fish the main river channel water during the lean period. The critical issue in the restoration of wetlands is the water source, particularly in areas where the catchments are covered or built up. And in such a case, the only source of water for the wetlands is sewage. Now, sewage is treated into what you call clean water by conventional technologies like STP and RO. But these technologies are very expensive and may not function under Indian conditions. And also, maintenance of these STP conventional technologies are also too expensive and cannot be sustained for a longer period. Therefore, there are now several what we call alternative technologies which can be used as a substitute or complementary to the conventional technologies. For example, the in situ biological remediation of sewage, including wastewater, as a primary, secondary, and tertiary treatment, using bioremediation technologies are widely practiced across the country. Of the different bioremediation technologies, the constructed wetland system is widely used across the world as a primary, secondary, tertiary treatment of wastewater. And BJ has been using constructed wetland system for the treatment of wastewater that enters into floodplain wetlands and wetlands of biodiversity parks. This restoration of wetlands requires expert group. I would like to tell you proudly that we have successfully restored one dead water body in South Delhi, and that is Neha Lake. This Neha Lake used to supply drinking water at one time to entire South Delhi, but it was dead because of development activities and became a sewage pond. So the only source of water for this Neha Lake is the sewage of 1 MLD, which comes from unauthorized colonies and directly enters into what we call Neha. Now, and is highly silted. So therefore, the twin challenges in the restoration of Neha Lake is desiltation of the water body and then treatment of the sewage of 1 MLD into a clean water. Using constructed wetland system designed by us specifically, we successfully treated 1 MLD of water within 20 hours using zero energy into a water that has the same quality as that of water, as that of river water. Now, similarly, we have successfully restored some of the floodplain wetlands by treating by in situ remediation of sewage that enter into these floodplain wetlands. I must tell you that the wetlands in South Delhi Biodiversity Park spread over an area of 160 hectares. And these wetlands receives 2,000 ml of raw sewage directly entering into this. we have decided to construct 11 wetlands to treat this 2000 mld raw sewage into clean water, and so that all these wetlands located over an area of 167 hectares are restored. And in fact, already 4 wetlands or 2 wetlands are functioning, and two constructed wetland systems are functioning, and the remaining are in the stage of what is called completion. Next, please. Now, the third object is how to manage the functional wetlands. This is a big issue. We have each state have a wetland development authority, but wetland development authority is a policy making body and not able to what you call manage these functional wetlands successfully. So therefore, I suggest that the management should be entrusted to local bodies such as Panchayat or Gram Sabha or municipal corporations. What I want to conclude is preserving wetlands is enduring the ecology of the planet and hence ensuring human survival over evolutionary time scale. Now I have 2 video clips which will show you how we have successfully what you call treated raw sewage entering into the wetlands into a clean water that has the same quality as that of a river water using constructed wetland system. The designs are specific to the what you call to the site characteristic features, and the and also depends upon the amount of sewage that enters into the water body. In the case of Neha Lake, the amount of sewage that enters into the lake is 1 mld. In the case of one of the wetlands in South Delhi University Park, receives about 15 mld raw sewage from Kilupuri train, and that design is slightly different from Neha design. Please show me. Now this is the Nilhas raw sewage coming from the drain, and this is from the drain, and this is entering into our oxidation ponds. We have 2, and from the oxidation ponds is entering into what you call why that's my entire entering into this is my raw sewage, and raw sewage is going through it into the channel, and these are my oxidation ponds. From the oxidation ponds is entering into oxidation zone having stones and pebbles, and you can see the riverbed pebbles, and this is my constructed wetland system with 25 species and regions. Now you can see the water that comes from the constructed wetland system is as clean as the river water. And with this water, we have successfully lost to its pristine glory. You can see that today, if you go, you can see 300 migratory birds. Where is that lake? Now you can see the lake is fully restored. You can see your image. You can see the bottom sediment. Now this is the Kilupuri drain, which discharges 15 mld, and This is my observation point 1. This is observation point 2. These are the streams which eliminate, and these are my channels through which water flows. And this is my filtration zone with a gabion, and these are the channels through which water flows. There is my constructed wetland system. Now this is my constructed wetland system. The plants are not fully developed. There are 25 species, and from these channels, the water enters into my wetland, which was dead but is now restored to its life. You can see we have 5 channels. The design is entirely different here. Now you can see the water enters into Yamuna. Yamuna, this water, clean water, is entering into Yamuna directly. What I want to say is, you can see the clean water that is entering into Yamuna. Now, what I want to say at the end is that these, what is called, alternative technologies, particularly the constructed wetland system, which has been designed by us, has been now widely used in different parts of the country. For example, UP, they're all planning to have this constructed wetland system for the treatment of what you call sewage coming from drains having less than 50 mld. Similarly, the other states are also doing this, and as per the direction of NGT and also CPCB. And thank you very much for your patience here. 15 minutes. Jaichandran, I
Thank you,
have
sir.
to go.
Thank
I
you,
have
sir.
to go. I have to go to another meeting. If there
Will you be
are
able to
any
take some questions, sir?
yes, I would be happy.
And any questions, please?
Morning, sir.
Yeah, yes, please. Go on.
Sir, how much of like minimum area of land is needed for a constructed wetland, or like to meet that? How much minimum area is needed of land?
Now I must tell you, number one, I am not taking any area outside the drain. It is in situ remediation on the drain itself. In the mouth of the drain, I have a space, and that space I am utilizing. In some places, Noida, the treatment is done right in the drain itself. There is no extra space requirement. But that depends upon the what you call the flow of sewage, the volume of the sewage.
Any other questions?
And you may ask me what the cost. Now let me tell you, the cost of 1 ml treatment by STP is 5 crores, capital investment. And maintenance cost, the annual cost would be runs in lakhs. Here, the cost of 1 ml treatment is less than 10 lakhs, is essentially meant for what you call purchasing the pebbles and stones and making a embankments and channel. Maintenance cost would be you need sludge. Sludge cannot be removed every day. It maybe can be removed by once in a week or 2 weeks. This is all what we need. And the system at Neras has been functioning for the last 5 years. All right, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Are there any more questions, please? So if there are no more questions, thank you so much, sir, for your talk. I will now request the second speaker, Dr. Ritesh Kumar. He's the Director of Wetlands International South Asia. He'll be talking on Ramsar Conventions and wetlands conservation and their implications for Delhi's wetlands. Dr. Ritesh, please.
Thank you, Dr. Jaichandran. Wish you a very happy Wetlands Day. I will follow up from.
I mean, your mic is not very. This thing. It should be very near. Not very much audible.
Is it okay now?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll quickly give a brief of what Ramsar Convention is and how can that potential be used for really wetlands. Ramsar, is a treaty of 1971, one of the oldest multilateral environment agreements, a precursor of what we call conventions. And even before the term sustainable development was coined, the network is about 2,400 sites and is the world's largest network of protected ecosystems. We know wetlands by different names, and Professor C.R. Babu very beautifully said that whatever you call it, a wetland will remain a wetland. The convention recognizes the diversity of wetlands and admits all of these kinds that we have in Delhi as potential Ramsar sites. Now, Ramsar sites, the convention was signed in 1971, has three pillars: Ramsar sites, wise use, and international cooperation. Now, India, had a very crucial role in shaping up the convention. This is a photograph from 1971 when the convention was being signed, and this is Dr. S.A. Hejmadi signing on behalf of Government of India on the convention treaty. And later on, at the insistence of Srimati Indira Gandhi, India joined the convention in 1982. This is the first photograph from the first meeting of the convention, and you can recognize Dr. Salim Ali right in the front row. So India had a very prolific contribution to shaping up of the convention. When we look at the Ramsar sites, now what are these Ramsar sites? And people often ask me, what will be the benefit to the state or benefit to the country by designating a site? Now, the purpose of a Ramsar site is an international network of wetlands which are important for conservation of global biological diversity. So the issue here is, what do we do to sustain the global biological diversity? For local or national biodiversity, we have different systems and different ways of prioritizing wetlands that can support. But Ramsar Convention itself talks about a global biodiversity, and it's a network approach. You can see the current distribution of sites. The largest site is about 12 million hectare in area in Rio Negro, Brazil, and the smallest site is in South Korea, is incidentally a constructed wetlands from South Korea, Gangwa Mahebram. If you look in terms of countries, countries like United Kingdom have designated 175 sites, wherein Suriname and Cyprus have only one site each. You need to have minimum of one site. So India is somewhere, with 42 sites. It is the largest network in South Asia. It is second only to China in number of Ramsar sites. And initially, incidentally, in the last 2 years, we have added more sites to our Ramsar list. Now, when you look at why do we take a network approach, when we talk about global biodiversity, especially species which migrate, it is not sufficient to provide conservation to one species. On the right, you see the migration map of red-shelled duck, moving all the way from Mongolia to China to Myanmar and to our wetlands in Sundarbans. Now imagine if we provide conservation to just one wetland, this species cannot be conservation cannot be guaranteed unless there is a framework for conservation for all the sites in the flyway. And the same applies to fish and several other species which use a network of sites. So Ramsar gives us an international platform to negotiate and create an arrangement wherein the network of sites can be put to a conservation system which enables the species to survive. How do we know that the site is important? There are 9 criteria that the convention has laid down. So, for example, Group A is about the site itself, if it is representative, rare, or unique wetland type. For example, I would say horse khas, Neela horse. Now, even if it is a constructed wetland, it is a unique system. It lies there with such a beautiful restoration effort. I would say it definitely qualifies for suggesting as the Ramsar site. If you look into Group B of the criteria, if the site has vulnerable, endangered, or critically endangered species, and herein the trick is these are vulnerable, endangered, or critically endangered as per global benchmarks. That is the IUCN red list, the global red list. If it supports populations of plant or animal species important for maintaining biological diversity of a particular biogeographic region or any plant or animal species in critical stage of the life cycles. The group B of the criteria on water birds, we conduct regularly the Asian water bird census and the data is available. There are several sites in Delhi natural wetlands which can qualify for supporting 20,000 or more water birds or 1% of individuals in population of one species. There are criteria based on fish, if this wetland holds indigenous fish subspecies or it is a spawning or a nursery ground, it can be designated under criteria 7 or 8. The important point to note is even if we qualify under one criteria, the site can be designated as a Ramsar site. The designation is the easier part of it. The most important thing is to realize what happens after designation. If we talk in terms of benefits, Ramsar today is perhaps the only convention that is working on a specific ecosystem and related to water. There are biodiversity convention which talks about range of issues, but Ramsar gives us a platform to communicate on water. The Ramsar sites definitely garner publicity and prestige. There is increased possibility to support implementation of management plan and financing. We can access to latest information and guidance, and international cooperations becomes easy. Now I'll show you. This is the map of two Ramsar sites adjoining to each other in West Bengal, which is the Indian Sundarbans, and on the right is the Bangladesh Sundarbans. That gives us a good basis to start cooperating on wetland conservation. But what is it that is on board in terms of commitments? If we commit to a Ramsar site, we'll have to ensure that management is of global standards. There is a Ramsar information sheet that needs to be updated every 6 years. And in the event of actual or even potential change in ecological character, which is an adverse change, we have to inform the Secretariat without delay and undertake ameliorative measures. Now, what are the possibilities of the Ramsar Convention implementation in Delhi? Right now, if you see the network of Ramsar sites in the country, we do not have any site in Delhi, despite having a rich natural and a good wetland diversity. I think that we said in the last meeting that we have over 1,000 wetlands in the city. Ramsar definitely gives us a benchmark to perform. And once systems are in place with such a beautiful wetland inventory work that is going on with the help of coordinated by the authority, with the restoration work that is being done by Professor C.R. Babu and his team, there is definitely a potential to add one site that we would consider the area on Yamuna floodplains definitely qualifies to Ramsar site. We should also remember that once the site is designated, the commitment of the central as well as state and UT government towards wise use becomes paramount. Several sites, when we look at Chilika and Lokat, were designated when the condition was very poor, and the Ramsar site designation itself was a very important trigger to commit to conservation of sites. So we can use those approaches, and possibly I'll request, Delhi Wetland Authority to look into possibility of designating the Yamuna floodplains, the area around Palindi Kunj, or one of the constructed wetlands, Neela Halls, as a Ramsar site, and contribute to the global network of wetlands that are important for sustaining biological diversity. Thank you so much, Dr. Jaichandran. That was all that I wanted to share on the sea.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ritesh. We got a couple of questions here in the chat box. Can you please check the chat box, Ritesh?
Let me see, sir, if I can see. Yes, chat box. So does the group A of the site criteria not consider minimum surface area? No. As I showed in the slide, Shivali, the range of Ramsar site area is 1 hectare in South Korea to million hectares in Brazil. So area is not important. The ability of the site to support global biodiversity becomes the binding criteria. I can see only one question, Jaichandran.
Any questions, please, from all other participants?
I have a question. I'm Ritu Rao, and I wanted to know. You said one of the criteria is the increase in the number of birds, that is more than 20,000 birds, can be a reason for inclusion in Ramsar Site Convention.
Yes. So, if for 3 consecutive years the midwinter census counts, in any of the census periods, if you get 20,000 individuals of water birds in a wetland, the data is sufficient to designate it to the Ramsar site.
But it should be 3 years consecutive.
Consecutive 3 years. So if you look into the detailed guidance, I did not discuss the detailed guidance, but if you look into the strategic framework, the kind of data requirement, at least 3 years is recommended to have, and these 3 years should be as recent as possible.
Okay. Okay, that's good news. Thank you so much.
Ritesh.
Yeah.
Jaichandran, I have a question. I'm a panelist also to Ritesh.
Go on.
Ritesh, can you tell me that if an area is having an alarming situation like water stress, should Ramsar Convention not consider those in those areas, whatever wetlands are located, as important wetlands? Because if there is a connection between water and a wetland, so why should only you talk about birds and all those things? Because it is an important connection which nobody sees.
Absolutely, Suresh. Now, this has been an interesting digression within Ramsar Convention criteria, which are heavily biodiversity driven, to the purpose of the Ramsar site designation, which also includes providing vital ecosystem services and especially hydrological services. The contracting parties, unfortunately, have not been able to agree on a clear criterion around water, but that does not, stop us from using criteria 1 to designate such sites. So when we talk about uniqueness of the site, it could be uniqueness in terms of services as well. So we can definitely use that criteria to designate wetlands. At the same time, Rohilla Sab, the convention has to progress much to accommodate water concerns. I would say that it is still in its, when you look into the finer lines, it is still very heavy on biodiversity and little on ecosystem services.
Thank you.
Dr. Ritesh, I've got one question. I mean, based upon your experience, which of the wetlands you think that the wetland authority should be concentrating on applying under the convention?
Jaichandran Saab, any wetland which you are confident to have a management arrangement can be designated. If you can sustain management in Neela Horse, I would say go for it. If you can sustain management of floodplains, go for it. Because the moment the designation kicks in, that is a flag that you will get, but then it will fall on your shoulders, on your able shoulders to implement management for wise use. You will need to get a management plan done. That plan should be of global standards. It should ensure wise use and a monitoring system in place to report adverse changes in ecological character. So I would suggest pick up a wetland wherein you have an identified institution to manage the wetland and where you are sure that wetland will not degrade to a condition wherein adverse reports will be sent to it. So that would be a wrong signal. And again, the convention does not distinguish between natural and human-made systems. So I think you are at liberty to choose between a site and the floodplains. I personally feel whenever I pass through Kalindi area, it looks to be a very promising site. The biodiversity is amazing. Given, especially even if the waterbird numbers are not there, the criteria on fish are very easy to justify. Spawning grounds or presence of indigenous fish species is sufficient, and at least our systems do have carps, minor and major carps. So that is good enough for designation.
Request participants to pitch in with any more questions. Any more questions, please?
Sir, Yavish Gupta this side. Sir, when Ramsar site is designated, have you seen any changes before and after the designation, people living around it?
Okay, so there are positive cases and negative cases. Positive cases, Chilka, when it was designated as a Ramsar site, it was in a very poor condition, nearly 1,000 metric tons of fish, and people used to be on streets. That is the time I'm talking about 95, 96, when I started work on Chilka. Today, the lagoon has 14,000 metric tons of fish, and the same houses which were in shanties today have 3 stories cemented. So, a good management, wetland management does bring positive outcomes to livelihoods. The beauty of Ramsar site designation as against a protected area designation is it allows for sustainable use of wetland patterns to be a part of management. It does not exclude people. Unlike protected area wherein you are restricted to harvest biomass, wise use principle of Ramsar site management allows for biomass harvesting, sustainable, tourism levels, low intensity tourism. All of these things are permissible within a wetland. But there are challenges as well, especially when you consider all Ramsar sites are also they attract the provisions of wetland conservation and management rules, wherein you will have serious constraints on promoting infrastructure around the wetland. That in a way is good because it is a deterrent to intensive development around the wetland and its zone of influence.
Continuing with that, I have one more question in it.
Please.
When like Ramsar sites is designated, do you see like changes in the people, like life, living style, sustainable living of the people is also there on the ground?
In some cases, yes, definitely. In some cases, yes, but in certain cases, wherein I see a site in Assam, Diporbil, where people are dumping, the city administration itself is dumping their garbage around. So in some cases, the commitments are being met, but in some cases, if I look into Rajasthan, Sambarji, last year you had about 1 lakh birds dying. Uh, Even a management plan does not exist. So there are good examples and there are bad examples. I won't say that we are in the best stages of Ramsar site management. So it is a mix. It is a broad mix.
So is there any positive example in India which has like in a particular Ramsar site, community involvement has plays a key role in that?
So look into Keshopur Miani in Punjab, wherein communities are effectively part of the governance structure, and that is why the Ramsar site designation is supported. Look into Bharatpur, you can see a lot of rickshaw pullers also getting quite a bit of livelihood through tourism. Look at Chilka case, wherein poachers, erstwhile poachers, are now active bird watchers and eco guides. So there are examples all around wherein you see positive changes in livelihoods around Ramsar sites.
So much.
You're welcome.
Any more questions, please? So, don't know any more questions, then Ritesh, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I mean, looking forward to again host you in some other meeting. Thank you so much. Now, I request the other next speaker, Miss Ritu Rao. She's from TERI School of Advanced Studies. Ms. Ritu Rao is soon to be Dr. Ritu Rao, and she's going to speak on Najafgarh Chil. Ma'am, can you please introduce yourself and then let's get on with the topic. We got district authorities and irrigation authorities from Southwest District. I'm sure that this topic would be of much use to them as well. Ritu Rao, please.
Mic is on mute.
Sorry. Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Jay Chandran. My introduction, I am working with TERI School of Advanced Studies, and my research area is water bodies in urban areas. And presently, I also work on Najafgarh along with INTACH, that is voluntary basis. So what I have worked on and what experience I have gathered, I'm going to share with you today. Let me start my talk today. At the outset, I would like to thank Wetland Authority of Delhi for inviting me for this webinar. Now, I'll start my talk with some startling statistics on wetlands. According to the Living Planet Report 2020, at least 85% of the Earth's wetlands are already lost. The Living Planet report is released biannually by the Worldwide Fund for Nature and the Geological Society of London. And since today's topic is wetlands of Delhi, and since Delhi is an urban area, I'll begin this discussion by emphasizing on the importance of wetlands in urban areas. Now, Bolen and Hanhamar, in a study of Stockholm, Sweden, in 1999, analyzed the ecosystem services generated by ecosystems within the urban area. Ecosystem services refer to the wide range of benefits which human populations derive from their ecosystems. In this study, the term urban ecosystems denote all natural green and blue areas in the city. The authors identified 7 different urban ecosystems, namely street trees, lawns or parks, urban forests, cultivated land, wetlands, lakes or sea, and streams. These ecosystems provide a range of ecosystem services like air filtration, microclimate regulation, noise reduction, rainwater drainage, sewage treatment, and recreational and cultural values. Findings of this study indicate that while the urban wetlands perform all the 6 ecosystem services, the other urban ecosystems lagged on one or more of these services. So, this finding highlights the significance of wetlands in the urban landscape. In short, urban wetlands make our cities livable. They reduce flooding, replenish drinking water, filter waste, and improve water quality, improve urban air quality, moderates microclimate, promote human well-being, and also act as a source of employment. Now, with this background, I would like to bring your attention to one of Delhi's water body and its associated wetlands, the Najagarh Jheel. The Jheel is a transboundary lake lying in Delhi and Gurugram. The Najagarh Jheel is the second largest water body in the area after the Yamuna River. Once spread over 220 square kilometers, the Najagarh Jheel has now shrunk to just over 7 square kilometers. Najagarh Jheel used to be an immense wetland lying in Gurugram and Delhi. It was fed by the Sahibi River and floodwaters from Gurugram, Rewari, Jhajjar, and northwest Delhi. Old records indicate that the Jheel was spread over 220 square kilometers. This was seen in the antique map, the SOI 1807 and the Delhi Gazetteer 1884. The Najagarh Jheel's wetlands hosted innumerable migratory and resident birds, including the endangered Siberian crane, pink-headed ducks, and greater flamingos. To date, wild animals and reptiles endemic to the region and several species of birds are sighted here. In addition, the Jheel was a recharge source for the surrounding aquifers. After the floods of 1964, when the Najagarh Jheel spread to about 240 square kilometers, widening of the irregular channel or the Sahibi River Canal resulted in the drainage of the Jheel. The construction of a supplementary drain in 1977 to carry excess flood discharge to the Yamuna was the last nail in the proverbial coffin and sealed the fate of the Najagarh Jheel. The water of Najagarh Jheel now comprises largely of sewage from the drains of the surrounding urban sprawl, with the bulk of it being disgorged from the Badshahpur drain flowing through Gurugram. And the Sahibi River, it is now the Najagarh Nala, which has its own share of wastewater being emptied into it by a multitude of drains on the Delhi side. The pollutants from the Jheel are leaching into the soil and contaminating the aquifers. The Jheel's ability to recharge aquifers have been severely compromised. As a result, the water woes of the residents of southwest Delhi and Gurugram have intensified because they have limited access to pipe water and are heavily dependent on groundwater. Add to this, Delhi has constructed an embankment on its side of the Jheel, depriving its arable lands of the regular inundation and recharge cycle. But the foremost threat here in Najagarh Jheel is the reclamation of land for building purposes. There is rampant construction in the Najagarh basin in contravention to the current environmental norms, and this is more pronounced in the Haryana side of the Jheel. It poses a threat to life and property apart from destroying a fragile ecosystem. In fact, the heavy spell of rains during the monsoon last year resulted in seepage and flooding in the basement of several residential colonies near the Jheel in Gurugram. Sold as prime waterfront properties, the developers invariably omit mentioning that their tall concrete structures sit atop soft wetland soil. This, coupled with a high intensity earthquake, this area is a seismic zone, as we know, both Gurugram and Delhi, could be a sure recipe for disaster. The Najafgarh Jheel falls under the purview of several government bodies, while the NCT government has earmarked Najafgarh Jheel in its 2021 master plan. No work has been done to demarcate the area of the Jheel in Haryana. Concerned about the dismal state of the Jheel, the Indian National Trust for Art and Cultural Heritage had filed a petition with the NGT in 2014, drawing attention to its imminent extinction owing to human apathy. It is further said that unless the NGT intervened, the land area of the water body was in danger of falling into the hands of unscrupulous real estate dealers, and the illegal construction can be used as a fait accompli to avoid the revival of the Jheel. This matter was disposed of in 2017 in view of the statement issued by the Haryana government that the lake in question is indeed a water body, and approval was being sought from the state government to identify it as a water body. However, even after 2 years, when no steps had been initiated to notify the Jheel as a wetland, INTACH filed another petition in 2019 in the NGT. The NGT sought a status report and action report from both the Delhi and Haryana governments. In a subsequent hearing in October 2019, Haryana filed a report saying that there was a doubt without whether Najafgarh Jheel is a private land or a wetland. This doubt was based on a 2005 revenue record. But there is a 1983 Gazette notification showing the area to be a lake. To ascertain facts, the NGT sought early revenue records prior to settlement. Since then, the hearing of the NGT has been extended several times because the Haryana government has not filed its report. Finally, at its hearing on 17 September 2020, the NGT ordered the preparation of an environment management plan for Najafgarh Jheel within 3 months. The environment management plan was to be prepared jointly by the state of Haryana and NCT of Delhi, with Central Pollution Control Board coordinating as a nodal agency. The next hearing was due on 27 January 2021. While Delhi has already prepared the environmental management plan, Haryana is yet to complete it. In view of this, the hearing has been postponed to 15th March 2021. So here goes the story of Najafgarh Jheel. Now, in the meanwhile, taking cognizance of the apathy and the lack of awareness of Delhi and Haryana residents, we created a Facebook group called Najafgarh Jheel Countdown to Extinction or Rejuvenation to raise awareness and rally people together. So far, there have been isolated efforts by activists and NGOs to save the Jheel. The formation of the Facebook group is a fledgling yet important step to consolidate these efforts. At present, the group has about 230 members. Members of the groups have been in different ways striving to raise awareness about the Jheel and to mobilize opinion to conserve the Jheel. We have also been writing about the Jheel in print media and speaking about it at various forums. Najafgarh Jheel recently recorded an increase in the total aviation population this year, from 9,453 birds in 2020 to 27,673 birds this year. As compared to other important wetlands in North India, it is one of the few places where both population and biodiversity of birds are growing in large numbers. It is therefore more important than ever now to notify the Jheel as a wetland in order to conserve its rich biodiversity. Protecting and reviving the Jheel entails two things. First, the Jheel has to be notified as a wetland to protect it from future encroachments. Second, concrete steps need to be taken to revive the Jheel. While solutions are not easy to come by, a collaborative approach by getting all stakeholders together on a common platform and working out a solution is the best way forward. Formation of a dedicated Najafgarh Jheel Conservation and Management Board might be a possible step in this direction. Najakar's Jheel's fate is hanging in balance between two possible outcomes. One, the seemingly inevitable how we lost the Jheel, if we insist on continuing on the present trajectory, and second, the more hopeful how we save the Jheel, if we manage to bull back from the abyss and reverse course. The benefits emanating from conserving and reviving the Jheel are numerous, which we can only overlook at our own peril. Thank you.
Thank you, Ritu Rao, for the wonderful insight into the ecological and historical aspects of Najafgarh Jheel. Now, I request the participants to pitch in with the queries, if any. No questions. Thank you so much, ma'am Ritu Rao. That was a fantastic talk, and it has definitely raised a lot of awareness about the history of Najafgarh Jheel and especially the judicial aspects of this particular intact case. Thank you so much, and we look forward to host you in some other meeting on wetlands. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Jaichandran.
Now, I request the next speaker of the day, Dr. Suresh Kumar Rohilla, who is a very senior expert on wetlands and water designs. He is now presently Senior Director, Center for Science and Environment, and he's going to talk today on water sensitive urban design and planning for wetland management in Delhi. Dr. Suresh Kumar Rohilla.
Are you able to see the screen?
Yes. Go ahead. Yes, you're audible. Please go ahead.
Is the screen my PowerPoint presentation?
Yeah, it's visible. Very well.
So I would take some time to share with you my experience. I direct the water program at CSC, but I have had a mixed experience of engaging with, the wetlands and water issues in Delhi since 1997, I should tell you. And I'm very happy to be part of this consortia of experts where we are trying to deliberate upon something which some of them I have worked with closely, and we started working in 1997 when we first highlighted the issue of need for conserving or protecting water bodies in Delhi. And I remember an interesting meeting, which I should, before I start off here, and I would like to say, I have highlighted the word land in the wetland management in Delhi, if you see in my title slide. And a very interesting meeting I remember, which I want to share intentionally here, that, this was a meeting in the Lieutenant Governor's office when I was director of INTACH Natural Heritage Division, where my colleague and mentor Manu Bhatnagar, who is also one of the speakers, we were there. And we attended that meeting highlighting the need for, preserving water bodies in Delhi those days. And this was a high-level meeting attended by, TDA, Jal Board, Irrigation and Flood Control and all those things. And they were given a day time to respond to saying that, what do they have to say about the, who should be managing the water bodies. So after a day or a week, I think then the second meeting happened. And very interesting thing emerged in that meeting was that DDA submitted to the Lieutenant Governor's office saying that they don't have anything to do with the water bodies and they are only a housing and a development agency. And Jal Board said that they are only a water distribution agency and they have nothing to do with the water bodies. And there was this third agency called Irrigation and Flood Control, which also exists today, and maybe some senior people are there. They said that their job is only to drain out the city and get the water outside the Delhi. And that was the day, and today, 23 years afterward, we see there has been substantial, progress in terms of sensitization. We at INTACH, with the funding of Delhi government, made a first inventory of water bodies in Delhi, and which resulted in, legal legislation, which is resulting in a lot of momentum also. However, it is an uphill task. There is a fight. I have moved on. I joined government also, Ministry of Urban Development. I worked with NCR Planning Board, was responsible for Delhi's sub-region plans to be approved, not approved. I have moved on. Then I did my PhD on linking groundwater and urban development in Delhi. I have a lot of people who have worked with me on highlighting this need. I should say in Delhi still we do not have a policy to be water sensitive. The land management is not water sensitive. However, I can also share that there has been some success. We have got Odisha government issue the first guidelines on water sensitive design and planning. With this background, I would like to share the concerns and learnings in Delhi that, what is the problem in Delhi and how do we link wetland management in Delhi and how do we link the urban development. If you see this slide, which shows that over a period of time, Delhi has been growing and built up area has increased extensively. The red color is shown in the built up area. And then on the other side, to support this population which lives in these built up areas, we are bringing increasingly more and more water from faraway places. So we see that 250 kilometers, 300 kilometers away, we are having big plans for water augmentation. On the other side, if you see, this is the pipe network map of Delhi's water supply. It might be a little old, but there might have been few more extensions. I have overlaid this with the groundwater table fluctuation. And if you see this yellow color over here in the southwest Delhi, South Delhi, and central Delhi, you would see that extensive decline of groundwater has been reported. So we would see that wherever there are pipes not able to reach in Delhi, there are people dependent on groundwater, and wherever there are pipelines, people still depend upon groundwater. And basically, this is to meet the demand supply gap and to meet the bulk water requirements which are there, which remain unmet because the centralized supply water system does not work, and there is we do not have a 24/7 water supply. I was reading the other day that NDMC is saying that they need 40 million liters gallons for water, and they only have 18 liters because they are not allowed to extract groundwater anymore. So falling groundwater levels tell us that there is inequity. Also, they tell us that there is a lost connection with water resources. The lakes, wetlands, and ponds, they are nowhere to be seen. They are only seen as an important, groundwater is seen as an important source, but that also is underestimated and unaccounted. Nobody talks about the resources, how this groundwater can enhance or augment the source of water. So these are some of the issues which are evident from this map. And also other thing is that this whole process of water crisis is basically due to the huge distribution losses, increased pollution, and cost recovery is not possible. And we will see that in the outskirts of Delhi, all these areas which are urban extensions shown in pink color, they receive a very low per capita water supply. However, for Delhi, where there is a pipe water supply system, they get 200 to 500 or 1,000 liters per capita per day. All this, however, the people don't use less water. They basically extract groundwater, they abuse the groundwater, and the groundwater has a close connection with these resources, basically declining. So this is clearly evident that the rapid urbanization slide which I showed, we have disturbed the natural balance because we have filled upon and encroached upon the water bodies, which used to actually also enhance the recharge of groundwater. However, what has happened is I am going to skip few slides, keeping in mind that interest when this presentation can be shared with other people. We have done residential development, commercial development, and the water is running through roads and causing flooding in Delhi and all over NCR. However, what has happened is that the pre-development and post-development, there has been increase in runoff. The water which used to go to every pond, lake, wetland, which we have lost in the process of urbanization, is basically changing the curve. The peak flows intensity is increasing. Water is running to the roads and common areas, and it is causing flooding. So pre and post development, there is an interesting scenario. So if you see the natural catchment, the urban extension of Delhi, and if you see what we are changing into, this clearly shows that there is a huge hydrological impact on which is urbanization is causing. So we need to have a different approach. So after my working with government, working with NGO, working as an academic, we at CSC we have built a program where we are promoting that we should we should do macro level stormwater harvesting, which can be done at lakes, ponds, and wetlands, and they can be the supplementary water sources. Actually, these are the resources. Rather than bringing water from outside, we should connect the water supply system to these resources of water supply, and stormwater management should be used, not just I have seen some earlier presentations where we have tried to do some curative or restorative measures. Basically, I would say that is only stunting of heart or something like this. Basically, we should see what a wetland is. Basically, wetland is a good quality water, and which is basically open green areas are supported. Putting sewage is not basically restoration of water bodies. That is, we are doing just a preventive or curative. Sorry, we are doing curative, but nothing preventive. We need to engage with basically with land use planners, and we need to delay store the water in different assortments. And these assortments can be a pond, they can be a neighborhood lake, it could be a regional lake, it could be Najafgarh Jheel. So then after you have utilized all those spaces, then only the water should be drained out. So this can happen at different levels, and we have done some detailed work and exercises on that. And this can be done at the neighborhood level, this can be done at city level. So in this, the wetlands and the lakes fall in this area, and the city planners, Delhi Jal Board, irrigation flood control people all should work together to reduce the runoff and use these wetlands and water bodies to fill it with stormwater. I think that is the approach, I would say. And in this direction, we have also done some work that usually people say, where is the land available in urban area? CSC has done scanning of master plans of big and small cities, and we have been able to map clearly that in the built-up area there is a considerable amount of open space available. And believe me, this is from the master plans, and this is ground truth, ground checked also. This is the amount of open areas available in planned areas and areas where these interventions can be sought for. Either they should be natural wetlands, which should be protected, or they should be constructed wetlands, as was being talked earlier. However, I would say we should not have constructed wetlands filled with sewage or treated sewage. I think we should utilize open spaces, and this is possible. We have done this with the detailed study of Dwarka subsidy. Dwarka subsidy, we have done detailed studies. We have used, the soil maps, contour maps, and we have explored the potential of, open spaces. And basically, Dwarka city was made up of after acquiring land from, some 18 to 20 villages. And if you really look at, every village used to have at least 2 or 3 village ponds. But today, if you go looking for the village ponds, they are nowhere to be seen. What is seen today is on the ground a huge amount of, in the name of land use, they have given the names like commercial, semi-public, park. So park has replaced all these open areas or filled up areas. We have calculated and we have done some catchment analysis, and we have explored possibilities that where you can do, detention ponds and retention ponds, which are basically, wetlands. We have done a detailed study in Dwarka in various sectors where possibly you can still revive, and these are the existing land uses. So without going for any major changes, the existing building norms, planning norms, using all those, we have identified within Dwarka where detention ponds can be there, where bio detention areas can be there, where check dams can be there, and all these areas are wetlands actually. These can be either created or they are existing. I remember in 1998, 99, we did a study of Dwarka, one of the sectors along Najafgarh drain, which was a low-lying area where water used to get filled up, and there is basically a big institutional land allocation there. So there is one of the university campuses located there. So basically, when you plan and design in urban planning, you should actually be sensitive to that depression areas, and contours guide you that what development should take place. So I think this study clearly establishes that we should just not follow the entire conventional approach, which is happening is that first we become a water supply city, sewer city, drain city, and then we start talking about, oh, we have lost the water cycle now. But however, we should leapfrog, and we should become a more water sensitive city, and we should try to harness water at different levels: retention ponds, natural ponds, lakes, and water bodies. I think these are some things which we should do, and we have developed this practitioner's guide for pushing this agenda to across the country and in Delhi also, which is called Water Sensitive Design and Planning. This was done for Ministry of Urban Development, and we have also listed several case studies across the country as well as outside country to highlight this issue that water sensitive urban design and planning in not only Delhi and NCR but across India is the only way forward. If we really want to make any changes, I think there is a website. You can see this is a web compendium. People can visit this at free time, and they can understand the issue that how wetland and water are connected, and how urban planning and land is connected. So I think this is what today I wanted to share with the group, and I'm ready to take questions if there are any on the CSC approach on water sensitive design and planning.
Any questions,
Thank
please?
you.
Thank you, Dr. Suresh. Any questions from the participants, please?
Yeah, Suresh, has the approach which you are suggesting, has it been applied anywhere in India? Or if you can, let us know about any successful case outside.
Next one.
Extensively, I think the website which I'm mentioning does list many projects in India as well as outside also. In Melton Town in Australia, it is there. Similarly, if you look at least in off-grid new sites where developments are taking place through EIA, we are ensuring that water sensitive design and planning happens. Because I have sat on EIA committees where when the off-grid development is happening outside, we are pushing for the developers to go for these kind of development. Like IIT Jodhpur has gone for water sensitive design and planning. Similarly, many other institutions have gone. Is that we should also include projects, affordable housing projects. So, government agencies, CPWD, DDA, municipal corporation, they should be sensitized with this approach of reducing the runoff, capturing all the areas. I remember when I was in NCR Planning Board, we had set up this norm saying that in a zonal plan, there should be at least 5% area earmarked underwater, either it is naturally available water body or it should be artificially created water body. There is a norm for everything else. There is a norm for transportation. There is a norm for industrial area, but there is no norm for what area underwater. So I think it was there, but however, the point is that planners do not want to do conservation. They are just like hunters in the jungle, and we are building concrete jungles over there. There's a clear demarcation. The planning norms of open area can be adjusted to accommodate water bodies. Either they are existing. There's a whole struggle of Ochanpur Lake, I think, or the village pond in Dwarka. We know, everybody knows that people had to go to port to save that talab, where I think one of the local NGOs is fighting that battle in NGT. It is as if seems that people are for preservation of water bodies and planners are for protecting livability. But I think it is we are fighting among ourselves, professional versus professionals. So that's one reason that CSC is investing a lot of time in capacity building of and sensitization of the people who are responsible. If you look at historically, like Design with Nature book on planning, basically he was not an architect or an engineer. He was an ecologist who did good designs. So over here in DDA, we don't find basically who are from other backgrounds. Like there's no groundwater expert in DDA. There is no water expert in DDA. We only find architects and engineers dominating the planning discipline. So I think it's an issue of also complex issues, also complex stakeholders coming together.
Thank you, Dr. Suresh. Any questions? Any more questions, please? So if there are no more questions, thank you so much, Dr. Suresh Rohilla. That was a very enlightening input session on water sensitive design. I hope that we carry forward this concept and we also stay in touch with CSC, the Wetland Authority, and kind of chart out a roadmap for implementing at least on a pilot scale somewhere else. Thank you so much.
And we need good because we can do so and we can change the things on the ground. But only thing is, it's a long way to do. We need to sensitize people. We need to people who are managers need to learn how to do this, and it will not happen overnight. I strongly believe that. Thank you.
Very true.
Sir, I will have to. I can be here on call for another 10 minutes. Okay.
No. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And so, Miss Ritu Rao, there is a question for you in the chat box.
Ritu, can you read out the question? Or
Miss Ritu Rao, there's a question for you in the chat box. Can you please answer it?
Hello.
Yeah, go on, please. Go on, please.
Sorry, I didn't get it. Can you please repeat?
I mean, there's a question for you in the chat box. Can you please read the
Okay.
chat?
Okay, fine. Just a minute. Okay. Well, I spoke to Mr. T.K. Roy. I think you're aware of T.K. Roy, Ms. Neha. And he told me that there was one specific area which was not being, surveyed. And the whole thing is the area that was not being surveyed, that added some amount of the number of birds, which was never investigated. And in general, also, there has been an increase in the number of birds. So this is what I got from Mr. P.K. Roy, who was actually, surveying this, was part of this survey. I hope I've been able to answer your question.
Could I just add to that?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Yeah, I think it is possible that, you see, last year there was an immense amount of rainfall on 20th, 21st August. So I think we have perhaps got a little more spread at this moment, water spread, which may allow more birds to come in. Secondly, it could possibly be because number of other water bodies have become, in much worse shape, and therefore this may perhaps be, one of the few habitats which is available, especially for migratory birds.
Yeah, that is true what Mr. Manu Bhatnagar is saying, because there is a mention that in North India, most places, the number of birds are declining, whereas there is an increase in Najafgarh Jheel. So it's one of the few places which I had mentioned in my talk as well.
Pooja Singh, shall we go ahead? Okay. Okay. Thank you so much. So Pooja Singh, thank you, Ms. Ritu Rao. Thank you so much for your time for answering her query. Now I request this next speaker, Ms. Neha Sinha, who is a biodiversity expert, avid birder, and a recent author. She should also speak about her book, which she authored recently. She is presently the Advocacy Officer of Bombay Natural History Society. She'll be speaking on migratory birds of Delhi NCR. Ms. Neha.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, Neha.
Thank you so much for having me, Jaichandran. Such a pleasure. Are you able to see the presentation? Okay, all right. So, thank you. It's a great privilege to be here. I'm from Delhi, so that makes it doubly more special because this is my city and I feel a great deal for its wild inhabitants. So, I'm going to be talking briefly about the birds of Delhi NCR and birds of wetlands more than anything else. And before I start, I just want to remind everybody that Delhi is the capital of India. It's a place where everybody comes to make their living and to kind of make their fortunes. But Delhi is also 6 hours from the Himalayas, and Delhi is also on the migratory pathway of the Central Asian Flyway, and that makes Delhi extremely special from a biogeographical perspective. So, moving to the next slide, I just wanted to point out that there are several flyways of the world. Birds that migrate every year, twice a year, use different flyways in the world, and Delhi actually falls on the Central Asian Flyway. So, if you just look at the center of that image, You see the light green, that's the Indian subcontinent. That's the Central Asian flyway. So a lot of birds from Russia, Siberia, China, Central Asia, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Pakistan, they come to India. And Delhi is actually a very important stopping point for them because a lot of birds will be actually crossing the Himalayas every year, twice a year. So by the time they come towards the northern plains, which includes Delhi, they're extremely tired. They're coming here to basically, refuel and to eat, to rest, and to gather energy over the winter, and also to save their energy. So just one example I wanted to give. This is an animated map of the migration of bar-headed goose. Now, this is an amazing bird. In the inset, you can see the picture of the bar-headed goose. And it actually comes from Tibet, China, Mongolia towards India. And almost the entire population, the entire global population of the bar-headed goose in this part of the world is actually wintering in India. And we actually get a lot of bar-headed goose even in Delhi. Delhi is an important place. I have counted more than 20,000 of them in Delhi at one single place, one single landscape. And this amazing bird actually is covering, it's actually going over Mount Everest. Even it's able to fly at extremely cold temperatures, in extremely difficult temperatures, which is why I have to re emphasize that by the time it comes to Delhi, it's extremely tired. It needs to rest, it needs to eat, and it needs to refuel. And just to show you where we see this bird, this is a picture from Najafgarh Jheel. And right in the front over here, this line of birds is actually the bar-headed geese. Behind that, you have greater flamingos. And the point being that this is a bird that's international. It's a bird that has to make a very long journey. And at this point in human history and in the world's history, there's a lot of warming in the Arctic area, in the Palearctic region as well, which means that the migration journey has become very long for many birds, and the migration journey has become longer. It's starting more early because it gets very warm from the places these guys come from. And there's also a loss of local wetlands. So a lot of wetlands are being lost in, say, Tibet and China, which is where these bar-headed geese are coming from. And so by the time they're coming here, they're tired, and they're also trying to adapt to the new changes that have happened. So the idea I want to suggest, the first idea I want to suggest is that wetlands are actually mosaics. It's not just about the water that we have in a wetland. It's also many different kinds of ecosystems that actually exist within the wetland itself. I'll give you an example from Delhi. So this is the Yamuna Biodiversity Park. This is a tree that's kind of on an island inside the park. The Yamuna Biodiversity Park is actually a created wetland, and it's been created to basically mimic the wetlands along the river Yamuna. So it has several ecosystems. So it has these grasses or reeds that kind of are on the boundaries of the water. They have the deep water ecosystem, and they have the riparian ecosystem, which is basically the ecosystems along the shallow edges of the water. And many kinds of birds as well as mammals utilize these kind of areas. So when I say a wetland, I actually mean several ecosystems within the wetland, which would be the deep water, which would be the shallow water, it would be the reeds, it would be the grasses. So much so that a wetland is used not just by birds or fish, but also by mammals. So you actually had a leopard coming inside Yamuna Biodiversity Park a few years ago. And apart from birds that are actually diving in the water, such as bar-headed geese or ducks, you also have these other amazing birds like the common crane, which migrates to India every year using wetlands and wetland mosaics, the several ecosystems that form around wetlands. So this is the common crane in the inset of this image. And this is a bird again that's coming, the ones that come to India are coming from Russia and Siberia region, again the Palearctic region. Now, this is a crane that has a big distribution. It's a European bird primarily, but it's also a crane that is found in very small densities. So it's not like if it has a large range, there are going to be many numbers. But even this bird, it's relatively shy, beautiful bird, big bird, but quite shy. Again, making this long migration coming from here towards Delhi, you still get them in Delhi. And this is a picture I took just 10 days ago. This is actually near Najafgarh, and the birds in Najafgarh are actually utilizing a large mosaic in the landscape, which is they're utilizing the Najafgarh Jheel, they're utilizing the agricultural fields next to Najafgarh Jheel, and they're also utilizing some fallow land which is not being cultivated at this time of the year. So this is a group of common cranes. Very good sighting for NCR because it's not so easily seen. Even though the name is common crane, it's not a very common bird. And this one right in the center is actually a young one. It's a juvenile, and these are the adults. And the next point I wanted to make is that wetlands are actually not just about water birds. So we just spoke about how wetlands are many ecosystems in a single place, but it's not just water birds that are utilizing wetlands, and migratory birds are not just water birds. I get asked this a lot, whether all migratory birds are only geese and ducks and birds that stand in water. But actually, you have many birds that migrate to India and to Delhi, which are not actually water birds. And a very good example is the steppe eagle. So this is the steppe eagle on the left. It's a big eagle, a very beautiful bird, quite endangered now because it's getting electrocuted a lot on wires. It's also dying of poisoning across its range. And these funny lines that you see on the map, these are actually satellite tags on birds that were satellite colored. So a lot of ornithologists, including BNHS, the organization that I work for, we catch birds and we put satellite tags on them to understand what is the route that they take. Okay, so these are the steppe eagle routes. So they're coming from here and here, and they come down to India. Usually, they don't cross the Himalayas. They come from the west, and these are the routes of these individual birds that were tagged, the ones right here. But we also see them in Delhi, and they must be coming again from the side, from towards west, towards Pakistan. And this is the steppe eagle, and this picture is from Najafgarh. This picture is also from Najafgarh. So Najafgarh clearly is an important site, not just for Delhi, but basically for the Central Asian flyway, because this is a site where it becomes an important stop for water birds, for birds of prey like the steppe eagle, as well as for other smaller birds, insectivorous birds that live near the wetland. And I want to quickly take you to another wetland of Delhi. This is the Neela Horse wetland. And Ritesh spoke about this a little earlier. The Neela Horse wetland was actually going to be destroyed because they were going to build a flyover over it. And they were basically just going to fill it up. And I think Mr. Rohilla also spoke about how a lot of planning processes are just done in a very blind way, where we are kind of not thinking about what we should do for making the city livable. Because we all live in buildings, but we need more than buildings to live. We need open spaces, and in fact, wetlands are extremely important as open spaces, and they should be given as much importance as green belts are usually given in city planning. But Neela Halls was going to be destroyed, but a group of people, this is an inspirational story, they came together to try to save it. And after a long battle and after working with the government, they were able to save Neela Halls. And this is Neela Halls right now. It's not obviously very clean. This is kind of the effluent that comes from detergent, from other kinds of waste that goes into water, but it is much better than it used to be. And this is actually a constructed wetland system in which there's an attempt to clean the water through biofiltration. And this is a green sandpiper, which is also a migratory bird, which I saw in Neela Halls. And basically, Neela Halls is a good example of how, if we really decide to save a place, it is possible to save the place, and it is also possible to get birds and make the place more than just standing water, but also to make it a living, breathing ecosystem. The last point I want to make is that wetlands really are networks. This is also something that Ritesh Kumar spoke about how wetlands can often have an extremely international importance. I just showed you how these international birds are coming to Delhi every year. But if we are able to maintain the ecological character of wetlands, then we are able to actually get a whole range of ecosystem services from them. Not only will they become networks for ecosystem services like our recreation, our tourism, or just our livability in a city, we are also making an important contribution to the conservation of migratory birds. So recently, the Delhi government constituted a committee to look at the Nachapur wetland in Delhi, and I was very honored to be on that committee. And I just wanted to show you a little bit more about Najafgarh, just to make you understand how this is a network really. So basically, the way that Delhi is, we have Haryana, we have Rajasthan, we have Uttar Pradesh. A lot of things are shared between the different states. So this is Najafgarh Jheel. This is a map made by the committee, and basically there's Delhi on one side and there's Haryana on the other side. This is Sultanpur Bird Sanctuary in Haryana, and just if you see the water bodies here, you can tell that it's actually like a network and a mosaic of various wetlands which are basically being used not just by birds but also obviously also in terms of storage of water, in terms of being a complex that's rich and biodiverse. And in order to save this jheel, this is a transboundary wetland, obviously, because it's lying between Delhi and Haryana. Both the states will have to work together, and that's also the beauty of nature. It's very difficult for states to work together, but it's also very rewarding if states are able to work out mechanisms to actually work together for something as wonderful as nature conservation. It also involves taking hard decisions. So, like if you have a wetland which has ecological value, which has recreational value, then we also do need to take hard decisions like totally prohibiting any heavy industrial use in the wetland. So this is actually one of the recommendations of the committee, which basically said that we should not have encroachment, we should not have heavy industry, we should not have the wetland being reclaimed or made into any other kind of land the way it often happens to wetlands. We should not have solid waste dumping. Now these are hard decisions that need to be taken by the state, but they're also decisions that are really useful for creating a livable city, for creating a city which can give relief to the people who live in it. This is also the most polluted place on the planet. This is also a place where people require, that kind of open areas and green belts so that we can live here more happily. And finally, I just want to end by saying that India is a part of the Convention on Migratory Species. So this is basically a convention that tries to protect all migratory species. That includes birds, it includes whales, dolphins, turtles, migratory mammals as well. So for India, a lot of migratory species are actually migratory birds, and there has been a new decision taken by the CMS that was taken last year, where India was the host of the CMS. And in the meeting, it was decided that there's going to be a secretariat for the Central Asian Flyway, and the secretariat is going to be in India. So this is India taking, a lot of leadership to ensure that we can conserve our migratory birds, and it's also India taking leadership for the rest of the birds on the flyway. Because we are just above the Indian Ocean, that makes India extremely important for all the birds that come down this flyway. Because below us is just the Indian Ocean and Sri Lanka. So some of the birds will go to Sri Lanka, but most of them come to India. And I'm going to end with a picture of this amazing bird that I saw near Najafgarh about 7 days ago. These are Nilgai walking, and this is the bird. And I'm going to show you, and I hope you've never seen this bird before. This is a northern lapwing. It is a migratory bird that's probably come here again from the Palearctic. And this is a bird that requires wetlands and agricultural areas that are submerged in water. And because of intensification of agriculture throughout the world, it's actually doing quite badly now. And the places where it breeds in are now threatened. And therefore, the fact that it's still coming to Delhi NCR means that we still have these habitats. The bird is like an indicator that we must protect, the habitats that we have, and that we can still make this a city that's kind of worth living in. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Neha Sinha. So, any questions from participants, please?
I'll just leave the slide now.
I have a question.
Sure.
Yeah, please go on.
Okay, this is regarding the common crane that you were mentioning in Najafgarh Jheel. So, is it the first time that it has been sighted after a very long time?
No, it's not. And again, I also want to add, the figure on migratory birds going up and down. Migratory bird numbers do keep going up and down, and it also depends on the day that you're counting. They also keep moving between wetlands. So, if the figure goes up drastically, comes down, it's not necessarily a trend. But common cranes are seen in Najafgarh, but, they do tend to use the submerged areas around the wetland more than the wetland itself. So they've often been sighted there. Never in very large numbers, but sighted there quite regularly over the years.
And you would agree this time there has been a wide variety, because I think the northern lapwing also, you cited it in Najafgarh Jheel, if I heard you correctly.
No, I think these are birds that have been coming. So over the last 4 or 5 years, they've been regularly coming. Actually, the fact that they're regularly coming is more important than the numbers in a particular year, because they do have their fixed migratory routes, and they do have pathways that they remember. So the most important thing is to preserve Najafgarh as a landscape. So the wetland, the fields around it, Sultanpur Flat. So that's the landscape all these birds are using. So to look at it as an ecological system and to preserve it like that with less chemical load, with less change in land use, that is the biggest challenge we have in front of us. And if we continue to have it the way that it is, these birds are going to continue coming every year.
That's nice. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Any more questions, please? Ma'am, I got one question, Ms. Jaichandran. I mean, what is the existing monitoring mechanism? How do we monitor birds coming in and out of Delhi now? What's the present mechanism available now?
So we have the Asian waterbird census, and I'll be happy to share the results with you. So this is done jointly by Wetlands International and BNHS. So we are monitoring wetlands and by counting the number of birds that are there and the birds that come every year. Asian waterbird census. So, we do this every year, and we also do other kinds of counts. So we did a flamingo count 2 years ago, of which Najafgarh and Okhla were part, because Najafgarh and Okhla have flamingos in Delhi NCR region. And we also do other bird surveys off and on, but the annual one is the Asian waterbird census, which happens in January. So we had it last January, as in last month.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Any questions, please? Thank you so much, ma'am. That was an enlightening lecture on birds of Delhi NCR. We are so much happy that you are here, and we wish you all the best for your new book on wildlife and wild food, right? Wild and wild food.
Yes, I don't have. I mean, I don't want to waste time. The copy is somewhere in this room. But thank you so much for your questions.
Wish you all the best. Thank you so much, ma'am. I now request the next speaker, Dr. Vivek Saxena. Vivek Saxena, sir, he's Indian Forest Service Officer of 1991 batch from Haryana cadre. He is now the country representative of IUCN. Sir, are you here?
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Very much audible, sir. So, welcome to this webinar, and we are so happy to have you. Your topic is biodiversity conservation water recharge. Up to you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And at the outset, let me first congratulate Mr. Jay Chandran and Government of Delhi for organizing this webinar on very, very important day, World Wetland Day 2020, which is also the 50th year of the coming of the Ramsar Convention. And with the increasing issues now, the importance of the wetlands at every level we are realizing. So just now, I was in a Wetland Day celebrations at the National Mission for Clean Ganga, which was chaired by the Honorable Minister of Jal Shakti and Minister of State also. And that itself reflects the emphasis and impetus which is being given now for the Wetland Day. So as we are celebrating World Wetland Day to raise the global awareness about the high importance of the wetland for the people of, and our planet, and it is also now occasion to commemorate the signing of the Ramsar Convention, and 2021 is also the 50th year of the coming of the Ramsar Convention in the Iranian city of Ramsar in 1971. So wetland and water, the theme for the World Wetland Day, it shines a very bright spotlight on the wetlands as a source of fresh water and encourages action to restore them and stop their loss. These words look very attractive, but to realize them into reality, involving all the stakeholders at all levels, that is really challenging. And when we look towards the challenges in the national capital region surrounding Delhi and the surrounding cities, the importance of the wetlands assume more and more significance, though more and more focus we get on the issues pertaining to the air pollution, the water and the wetlands, that is a very, very important issue which needs to be focused. And I am happy that this event has been organized today. At least this will give impetus to the campaign involving all the stakeholders. As 2021 campaign, it highlights the contribution of the wetlands to the quantity and quality of the water, fresh water on our planet. And water and wetlands, they are connected in an inseparable coexistence, and that is vital to the life and our well-being and health of our planet. As per one of the estimates, about 46% of the species they inhabit the wetland ecosystems. Now, its connection with the IUCN, the International Union for Conservation of Nature, though most of you may be aware, but let me give you a very brief background about the IUCN. IUCN is one of the world's oldest conservation network, which came into being in 1948, and in last more than 70 years, it has played a very pivotal role in shaping the global conservation agenda. Maybe the three Rio Conventions, the Sustainable Development Goals, Aichi biodiversity targets, and coming up of the post-2020 biodiversity framework discussion. And IUCN and Ramsar Convention, IUCN is one of the international organizing partner to the convention right from the beginning. And over the years, IUCN has collaborated with the Ramsar Convention in many ways, such as supporting countries in accession to the convention, scientific assistance in the designation of the Ramsar site, providing help at the site level management, and supporting the capacity to link local communities with government authorities to ensure the conservation of wetlands. So as I was mentioning, the IUCN network stands globally at more than 1,500 members, and it is a unique hybrid organization in which the national governments are also members, and civil society organizations and specialized institutions are also members. Like in India, the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change is a state member of IUCN, and apart from that, in India we have about 43 IUCN members. Apart from this, the IUCN has a system of the IUCN commissions. There are 6 IUCN commissions that range from the Species Survival Commission, Commission on Education and Communication. And through these IUCN commissions, there are members who are experts and researchers of these commissions. They organize themselves into various type of specialist groups and come out with various type of knowledge products. One of the flagship product or knowledge product for which IUCN is having a brand value or known everywhere, that is the red listing of the species. So through the red listing of the species, through the species assessment, the habitat degradation assessment, population trend, the species are categorized into various categories, and accordingly the conservation action is initiated. Just like if any species is categorized as endangered, vulnerable, threatened, accordingly the conservation action at the local level. So when we talk of the species conservation, especially when the wetland species, the red listing process is very, very important, for which IUCN plays a very pivotal role. Now coming to the Delhi and surrounding areas, in the urban areas, what is the role of the urban wetlands? because of the conflicting vision in terms of the use of the land, the wetlands sometimes during the policies and the planning has not been given that importance, and they were considered to be used for the development purpose by simply filling up of those land areas without considering the disruption in the drainage pattern as well as the considering the threat which it gives to the species conservation. Over the period of time, though we have been more and more emphasis for the wetland identification of the wetlands, the wetland rules have come into being, and wetland authorities have been constituted. But at the same time, when it comes to the real implementation and at the grassroots level, it is still a lot of challenge because of the conflicting development needs and sensitizing the stakeholders for the integration of the conservation aspects while having the development planning and the long-term needs is the need of the hour, because somewhere our disconnect with the nature, not taking care of the nature, is also one of the result of this we are presently witnessing in the form of a COVID pandemic, when entire world has come into the at the crossroad, and we are witnessing for last 1 year the challenges we are facing, the economy which is facing challenges, the various type of other issues which have come into being. So for sustaining everyone on this planet Earth, every species is to be given equal importance, because on this planet Earth, the species have been provided the proper space, the proper habitat, and this destruction or disruption of the habitat that causes such type of threats of the living. So unplanned urbanization that has led to destruction of many wetlands that was once abundant in the Delhi, and it is believed there were around more than 1,000 water bodies in Delhi. But the encroachment, increasing water pollution, the greater likelihood of the floods, and most importantly, loss of aquatic life and fewer birds in the absence of the notification of wetlands earlier in the national capital region, is still many of those wetlands as per the rules needs to be notified. One of the positive signal is Delhi ranks second among the national capitals in terms of the number of bird species it hosts. Only Nairobi in Kenya boasts a greater variety of birds than Delhi's checklist of nearly 450 species. So we should take pride and also learn a lesson that how to ensure the conservation or presence of such species in Delhi and surrounding areas, as well as efforts to have more and more species count during the bird census. As Neha mentioned that Asia World Water Census 2019, I will give the example that it revealed that the migratory bird count of the Najakar Jheel and the drain had fallen by nearly 50% compared to the last year. So this census, which was carried out in 6 wetlands in the NCR region, it itself indicates that somehow the importance or action for the wetland conservation and wetland management which is needed in the NCR region has not been given. One of the practical example is that Bhatnagar Lake in near Faridabad, which has now become a totally a dry land, and many efforts and talks are there for revival of this Bhatnagar Lake wetland. But it's still, once we get the success, only then we can say that to what extent we will be able to get the desired results. Because in the process of the development, the natural drainage surrounding the Bhatnagar Lake, the paleo channels which were there through which there used to be water in the lake, that have been blocked, and it is really now very challenging through various engineering measures, to the natural engineering measures, to find out how to find this solution. So these are some of the examples. If you recollect that around 2 years back, nearly in the Sultanpur National Park nearby, there was a black-necked stork which had a plastic in its beak, and that because of that it was not able to drink water or take any food, and there was a lot of media coverage of that. And I will congratulate to the bird watchers who brought it to the knowledge, and that time lot of efforts were made, and we could save it. But at the same time, it also gives a lesson to everyone the type of waste management practices we adopt, because when these birds, migratory birds of the wetlands, they go for the water drinking, and but at the same time, due to our urban practices, if we are not disposing our plastic waste and other type of waste properly, so these linkages of the waste management has also have to play very important role in wetland management. So integrated wetland management should ensure proper waste management at the same time when we ensure the proper drainage system for ensuring the quality of the water and ecosystem services which the wetlands provide. These conservation rules and authorities notified by the ministry, they have been done. Certainly, the one of the big achievement is now in India about 43 Ramsar sites have been notified, largest in the Asian region, and still lot needs to be done. Delhi State Wetland Authority has identified about 278 wetlands in Delhi for restoration and conservation of water bodies. Now coming to the IUCN further initiatives on this. IUCN has also launched recently the global standard for nature-based solutions because ultimately the solutions lies if we look toward the nature, and nature provides all the guidance and solutions, and based on this we have to design our practices and further development you can say policies and the framework. So investment in nature-based solutions that helps safeguard and maintain ecosystem that is vital for the food and water supplies, protects against natural disasters. And these IUCN nature-based solutions, eight criteria and a number of indicators which need to be tested when we adopt that any particular thing we are going through the nature-based solution standard. Some of the few examples how IUCN is advancing nature as a solution is that water infrastructure solutions from the ecosystem services, the ecosystem protecting infrastructure and communities, the Bond Challenge Barometer, that is the forest landscape restoration, the global commitment to bring land under the forest landscape restoration, for which India's pledge is the largest pledge presently of 26 million hectares by 2030, which was announced during the UNCCD COP, which was held in India in September 2019. The nature-based solution for the resilient societies. So now the challenge is how to the mainstream the concept of the nature-based solutions. For this, the design, verification, and scaling up is the need of the hour. And nature-based solutions need to be increasingly adopted into the business as usual, a standard that will ensure the quality and credibility of the solution. So there are some of the few recommendations when, or you can say, appeal which we should make on the occasion of the Wetland Day. We need to have a more and more intelligent urban planning policy development, including development framework and a special donation to protect ecosystem services, and involving all the stakeholders, sensitization them. When we talk of the sustainable cities, we talk of the smart cities, the wetlands need to be given their due place to have a better living on this planet Earth, and especially the challenges in Delhi and NCR region, they are tremendous. And with these words, I again congratulate Delhi government, especially Mr. Member Secretary, Mr. Jay Chandran, for organizing this webinar on a very important theme on this important day. And I hope that the key learnings and discussions from today's deliberations will guide us further to meet up the objectives on this wetland day and also for a better future in the NCR region. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. That was a very enlightening speech, sir, on the topic. I will request all the participants to kindly type in their questions or ask the questions if any.
Jaichandran ji, I'm pulling them on this side. Hello. Jaichandran ji, I'm Poonam this side.
And ma'am, go on.
It was really good. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And congratulate to you on organizing this. But I have many times I have said, what is happening now? Like, I'm a Delhiite and I have worked in DDA for so long. But what was happening, we had done a lot of water bodies, but they were basically kept as sunken lawns because there was no water in it. But now, what all is happening? Like, we have been told that these water bodies to be restored also, even with the water, not only the rainwater. Otherwise, they were all rainwater fed. water bodies. But now, most of us, I'm not saying only DDA, everybody, we are trying that these water bodies should be filled with the STP water. But yes, we have already given the quality of a water, but still I doubt we will be able to ensure that. Hope we don't pollute the groundwater, whatever we have. That is my major concern. And how to take care of that, I don't, I hope it's not too late. We just started doing it, all the authorities in Delhi. But how to monitor is a crucial thing at this moment.
आएगा नहीं सी से आएगा नहीं पिछली बार भी नहीं आया था वो हमने फोन करके
So would you like to respond, sir?
लेकिन एक बात है इसमें इसमें
Uh,
आउट ऑफ
I'll,
लिख है क्या हाँ वो भी दिख रहा है तो दोबारा कॉल किसको करें
Yeah.
नहीं
The question is to
इसमें से नहीं आ रहा ये फैसला नहीं ना पड़ा है ये मतलब
Manu sir, are you trying to respond?
well, I think I could provide Poonam ji with a very specific response, but I'll do that in the course of my talk.
हाँ सब में है इसमें
Okay, that's great. So if there are no more questions, thank you so much, Vivek Saxena sir, for your talk.
उसका जैसा आधा आधा
Thank you so much. And sorry, I thought that question was addressed to someone else. And
Yeah, that is a very Delhi specific question. I'm very sure that Manu Bhatnagar sir will take up in.
and this Delhi specific question, the real challenge lies to you as a member secretary. That, how to ensure regarding this STP water or something that because the real action at the ground level, what we are talking today, we are talking at the policies and all, but at the ground level, ensure involving all the relevant stakeholders, how to sensitize them, how to sensitize the other arms of the governance also that because the perception and the vision of the different arms is like you look after the wetland management, but somebody who is dealing with the waste disposal and all, they also need to ensure that in the wetland also it is not like that they can just put the STP water like that. So this is all the proper, you can say, convergence of the thought, policies and actions at the ground level where your role becomes very, very important.
Very true, sir. More commendable is that today's webinar is attended by all the land owning agencies, the water body owning agencies. So what we are talking is at a policy level, and the participants they are more more practical oriented people who actually work on the field. So that is an interesting mix of audience we got here today for today's webinar.
Thank you for connecting everyone.
Yes, thank you, sir. So on that note, sir, thank you very much once again, sir. We look forward to host you again in some other meeting on wetlands. On behalf of the Wetland Authority and the GSTD, thank you so much once again.
Thank you.
And now we come to the final speaker of the day. In the concluding remarks, Manu Bhatnagar is the principal director of INTACH, and he will be giving the concluding remarks of all the talks we had today, as well as he'll be also talking on the various lessons and observations he had on water issues during his career or during his career. Sir, please, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Jaichandran, and good morning to all of you. All the speakers before me, they have given some very interesting and sharp insights. Dr. Babu spoke about his constructed wetlands and the restoration of several wetlands by the use of treated wastewater through constructed wetlands and how that is a very economical method. Ritesh ji spoke about Ramsar sites and the fact that Delhi still doesn't have a single Ramsar site, although there is some potential, especially he pointed out in the Kalindi Kunj area to start with. Ritu Rao spoke about the complexities of recovering Najafgarh Jheel, and yes, we are greatly involved in that. It's a very complicated issue, but still we have made some headway in the last few months. Dr. Suresh Rohilla spoke about the need for hydrological sensitivity in planning, something which is greatly lacking. And he emphasized not only the need to have hydrological sensitivity in planning, not just in new developments, but also in redevelopment of existing areas in order to improve their hydrological resources. Uh, Neha spoke about migratory birds and the need for a network of wetlands and how Delhi is such an important location on the Central Asian flyway, which she illustrated with the uh, bar-headed geese. And I think we need to expand upon that network. And of course, Dr. Vivek Saxena spoke about the importance of wetlands and the ecosystem services. So, with that little summing up, I would just proceed upon a few other observations, and those are in this order that the Delhi Parks and Gardens Society has tracked down about 1,033 water bodies in NCT Delhi. Many of them have been extinguished, and according to our observations, I think about 430 or so are still practicable. Uh, Many have been encroached, and even in these 430, many of them are dry, but they are recoverable. Now, uh, unlike other cities such as, let's say, Bangalore and Hyderabad, where the terrain is undulating and the rainfall is quite heavy, Delhi has a fairly even terrain, and it has, less than half the average Indian rainfall. India's rainfall is about 120 centimeters, and as you know, Delhi has only around 60 centimeters. So we do not have really large water bodies. The bulk of our water bodies are small village ponds, about acre, 2 acres, 3 acres generally, or maybe 4 acres, and we have really few very large lakes as such. Now, with regards to these village water ponds, we have a very interesting observation, and if I can just share the presentation, yeah, here you go. So here we are. This is can go to slide two. Yeah. Now this is Katrola village, which is a prominent village in near Dwarka area, and as you can see that this most of the villages in Delhi, they have got a kind of a small elevation, a little hillock in the old Abadi area. Center would be about 6 meters higher than the peripheral areas. And so this surface acts as a kind of a catchment slope from which you will find that on the periphery you will have the village ponds. So these village ponds basically gather the surface runoff from this hillock. And the highest point will be probably the most prominent house of that village. And this you can check in village after village in Delhi and in many parts of North India. So this is how these village ponds have got water in them. And most villages in Delhi have at least two, sometimes three, and even four. Uh, Now, I would also then show you this map, which is of the geology of Delhi. And we find that we have different strata conditions. So along the river, we have the new alluvium with very deep bedrock. On the west of the ridge, we have the old alluvium. That's a slightly different formation. It is said that the Yamuna previously used to flow on this side of the ridge. And then, of course, we have the ridge, which is a quartzite rock strata. And all of them have different kinds of water bodies. So in the quartzite zone, you generally have either old quarries, which have been abandoned now, or you have got, check dams. In the new alluvium area, you find that you have water bodies which don't, in my view, have a catchment. For example, if you see the Bhalaswa Lake, which was the old horseshoe lake, an oxbow formation, or the Tikri Khod Lake, which was also an oxbow formation. Now, these were actually filled by the spill of the river and kept, perennially wet because of the very high water table. So it was not that they gathered runoff from, catchment. So you have this. Similarly, you have Sanjay Lake, which is a meander scour on the east of the river. And so these are all, the floodplain lakes. And then on the west over here, apart from Najafgarh Jheel, you have mostly village ponds. But you also have, these old depressions which have now vanished. They have all become cultivated agriculture fields. Mundela Depression, quite a large one, and Shamspur Khalsa Depression. And these are all on the Mundela drain, which was a tributary to the Najafgarh drain. So we have these different kinds of formations and which have different kinds of water bodies in them. Now, just to show you some work which was done in reviving what I feel was a pioneer work, and that was revival of the horse cart. And this was done, the planning was done several years back. We started speaking to the DDA since 1998. And it took 5 years to convince them that it was possible to revive this dry water body, which is about 15 acres in area. And as you can see, there is a island in the middle of it, about 1 acre. And this was the dry bed of the Hawes in 2003. Now, various investigations were carried out, and we found that it was a very pervious strata and would not hold rainwater for very long. So the regular source of water was the Vasantkunj STP, which comes through Neela Falls, the outflow. And then 5 check dams were constructed in the Sanjay 1 area. And in one of these check dams, we introduced the duckweed plant. That's a floating, small 1.5 2 centimeter long plant. And as the water passes through the roots, the plants absorb some of the nutrients, and the water which then flows past is even cleaner. So here you can see the duckweed carpet formed on the lagoon of the central check dam, like this. And ultimately, we were able to get the horse cars in this order. And of course, it's not always like this. There are a lot of ups and downs, but at least we were able to revive the lake. Now, the question which Poonamji had asked, we kept a particular watch on that, and this was the groundwater sample tested just before the start of the project. And then here you see in April 2013, 10 years later, you can see that the water has hardly deteriorated. And frankly, I can tell you that with chlorination, this water is potable quality. So if we have, now this is a result of having fairly clean water to fill the reservoir. And then, of course, the soil filtration is another factor which cleans the water as it percolates down to the water table. So I think we need not have reservations as long as we are taking proper precautions in the source water. Now, during the course of the project, the duckweed carpet was, not attended to ultimately, and we were also not part of the project by that time. And a whole lot of nutrient-rich water started coming to the house, which made it algae rich, covered with kite. The process of bacterial bioremediation was carried out, and that ultimately showed that it was possible to remove the algae through natural methods. And you can see this was a result of, about 1 month's effort, and which is reflected in these sample bottles. Now, that then also made the horse a host to biodiversity. And you can see these common poachers, which are not really that common. And various ducks. And I always look at this, that this is a constance of ducks taking place, but the white man still rules. And here you can see another congregation with the resident spotwells, the Eurasian coot, the northern shoveler, which comes in from Central Asia and still further north. And this is the island in the lake, and the spotbill ducks are resident over here in this wild shrubbery, and they also breed over here. And very often we have suggested that this slope at some point or the other there might be some steps carved into it so that the birds can move up and down easily, but that hasn't taken place. Now I move to Najafgarh, and here I want to show that our planners have not really been sensitive to the natural conditions which obtain near water bodies, and it has been viewed, the land of water bodies has been viewed only as real estate. As we know that real estate has tremendous, drive. It is a driver of destruction of natural assets, and what has happened in this case, this is the Najafgarh Jheel, and this is the microzonation map of Delhi made by the by the Department of, I think, Art Sciences. And it shows that this is the highest zone of soil liquefaction in the NCT, and obviously this extends beyond the administrative boundary. It's not confined by the administrative boundary. So we have Gurgaon on this side, and then we also know that this is the seismic zone 4. So these conditions combined can be disastrous for building activity. And yet, if we look at it, there is pressure on the Delhi side to, come into this zone and build and take advantage of the Dwarka Expressway, make another road over here and raise the value of the land. But here on this side, I would just show you that this is the Gurgaon master plan. And this red line is showing us the 100-year flood, that is the one which took place in 1977. So it reached the contour level 212.5. And yet we are finding that the planners and town planners from Gurgaon, under pressure of the real estate lobby, they are trying to come into this zone. And as Ritu Rao told you that many of these buildings, some which have come up over here, these zones are still empty. Their basements have been flooded. And I could show you a Google image also. I don't have it on this presentation, but a number of those buildings are standing in water. So must we do such things? Gurgaon, as you know, is hard pressed for water. And this lake, we have calculated, if we form it on both sides, it can supply water on a regular basis to 500,000 population. That is not to be taken lightly. So with that, I come to the end of the presentation. Now, I would just show that, see, the National Wetland Inventory Assessment of 2010-11, that has been noted in the order of the Supreme Court, the Honorable Supreme Court, in February 2017. They ruled that any wetland which is shown in the atlas is to be protected. And yet I find that Tajpur Pahari, which is a huge quarry just south of the Badarpur NTPC plant, that is being filled up with debris. So similarly, I find that Old Fort Lake, for which there was some struggle, which is in a semi-critical water zone, that has been lined with an impermeable membrane. Okay. And now I'm told that Shadra Lake, the Welcome Lake in Shadra, is also being similarly lined with an elastopolymer sheet. So where will the recharge take place? Okay. So I do think we need to look at these things carefully. They are not required. There are plenty of solutions which can overcome small hurdles. Lodi Garden also, the Atfula Lake, a small lake, you go and see it is completely concretized. So these are some issues. On the planning side also, I would say that, there needs to be far more hydrological sensitivity. And in order to, I would just bring about an interesting aside also. In the case of the Tikri Lake, now we looked at the 1936 Survey of India map, and we noticed an S-shaped village S-shaped water body close to Tikrikhod village. Okay, but in the current Google map, we could find only a small portion, but even that small portion was some 9-10 hectares large. Now, we wrote several times in 2013 and 14 to the Lieutenant Governor, to the Chief Minister, Chief Secretary, that this needs to be protected. Now, some, motion happened, but taking this as a warning, several people started encroaching upon the lake. So, in January 2015, after a visit was taken with the DDA officials at the site, by October of the same year, 2015, the Google imagery shows a triangular encroachment into the lake. Now, we had no option, but I had to ask somebody to go to NGT with a PIL. And of course, there was a lot of tussle. Who is the ownership? Whose ownership is it? Nobody would say. Then in the DDA's land use plan, it was shown as a residential area, the lake. Okay. But finally, what happened was that it was said that it will be, taken care of by the Wetland Authority. But the Wetland Authority, although it had been formed, it had not been notified. So in March 2019, the NGT, under this case, they gave the order of having the Wetland Authority of Delhi notified, which happened thereafter by the end of April 2019. So that was another, good outcome. And now DDA is also fencing the site to prevent its further encroachment. So these are the battles and struggles which take place. And I do think that these wetlands, they all contribute towards meeting the SDG 11, the Sustainable Development Goal 11, that is inclusive, sustainable and resilient cities. And so we should really, work hard on saving our wetland network. And I do think we should also have a more ambitious goal, that is to identify and get notified some Ramsar sites in Delhi. So that I think would certainly be something which we should all look forward to. There are many more things one could say, but I think I would conclude at this point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. So I think that draws us close to the end of this webinar. It has a fascinating exchange of ideas and thoughts on this day, on World Wetlands Day. I thank all the speakers for being here. Professor C.R. Babu, Dr. Ritesh, Ms. Ritu Rao, Dr. Suresh Kumar Rohilla, Ms. Neha Sinha, Dr. Vivek Saxena, and Sri Manu Bhatnagar. Thank you once again. We, on behalf of the Wetland Authority, thank all the speakers and all the participants, especially all the water body owning agencies, are all present here. We hope all the ideas and all the expert comments which you have received will be holding in good steadfast and help you in restoring and creating more wetlands in your district. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
सर कर दूँ ना